Hannah was only 3 years old and had never seen her own mother's face. Blind since birth, she lived in a world made of sounds and textures. But when her tiny hands touched an image of the Virgin Mary in a church in Florida, something began to happen that no one could explain. This is a miracle of the Virgin Mary that changed 2 lives forever. But before we continue, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I'd love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. Sarah woke up that Sunday with her body aching. It wasn't anything new. After working 6 straight days cleaning offices until midnight, every Sunday began like that. But it was the only day she had with Hannah, so it didn't matter if every muscle in her body begged for rest. Hannah was already awake. Sarah could hear her daughter's voice coming from the bedroom, talking to her teddy bear. Hannah always woke up talking. She would create entire stories, whole worlds inside that 3-year-old mind of hers. Worlds she would never see, but that existed as real to her as anything else. "Good morning, my beautiful girl." Hannah turned her head toward her mother's voice and smiled in that way that made Sarah's chest tighten. A pure, genuine smile, without malice, without bitterness. Hannah had been blind since birth, but she didn't know her life was any different. For her, the world had always been this way, full of sounds, smells, and textures, but dark. Sarah was the one who knew. Sarah was the one who carried the weight of looking at her daughter and knowing that Hannah would never see a sunset, never see her own reflection, never see the face of the mother who loved her more than anything. "Are we going out today?" Hannah asked, still hugging her teddy bear. "Yes, we are. We're going to church." Hannah didn't really know what church was. Sarah had taken her a few times when she was a baby, but it had been more than a year since they last went. Not for lack of faith. Sarah believed in God, or at least she wanted to. But it's hard to have faith when you work 16 hours a day and still barely manage to pay the rent. It's hard to believe someone up there is watching over you when you spend sleepless nights wondering how you'll feed your daughter the next day. But that Sunday, Sarah felt she needed to go. She didn't really know why. She just felt it. They had breakfast together. Sarah made pancakes with the last cup of flour she had at home. Hannah ate slowly, savoring every bite, using her fork with the impressive precision she had developed. She never missed her mouth, never spilled food. After breakfast, Sarah gave Hannah a bath. The little girl loved bath time. She loved feeling the warm water on her back, the smell of the soap, the foam that formed as Sarah washed her hair. Hannah closed her eyes, even though it made no difference, and stayed still, enjoying every second. Sarah carefully combed her daughter's hair. Hannah had straight brown hair that fell to her shoulders. Sarah tied it into a ponytail and dressed her in the blue dress her grandmother had given her before she passed away. Hannah didn't know the dress was blue. She had no idea what blue even meant. Sarah had tried to explain once, but how can someone understand a color they've never seen? "Do I look pretty, Mom?" The most beautiful girl in the whole world. Hannah smiled. The church was 6 blocks away. Sarah held Hannah's hand, and they walked slowly. Hannah gripped her mother's hand tightly, letting herself be guided. She had learned early to trust Sarah's steps, to follow without questioning, knowing her mother would never let her get hurt. The sun was strong, even though it was still morning. From time to time, Hannah lifted her face, feeling the warmth on her skin. She loved the sun. She said the sun was her friend, that it talked to her. Sarah never corrected her. If Hannah wanted to believe the sun talked to her, that was fine. What difference did it make? When they reached the church, a few people were standing by the entrance. Sarah greeted them with a nod and went inside. The interior was cool and quiet. It smelled of candles and old wood. Hannah squeezed her mother's hand tighter. "Is this it?" "Yes, sweetheart. Come, let's sit." Sarah guided Hannah to a pew in the middle of the church. They sat side by side. Hannah stayed quiet, her head slightly tilted, listening, The sound of footsteps, the creak of benches, the soft murmur of prayers. Hannah absorbed everything. Mass began. The priest came in and started to speak. Hannah didn't understand much of what he said, but she liked his voice. It was a calm voice that filled the space. Sarah didn't pray during the Mass. She just sat there, too tired to fold her hands or close her eyes. She looked at the altar, at the statue of the Virgin Mary up front, the blue mantle, the outstretched hands, that serene face that promised peace. Peace. Sarah could hardly remember what it felt like to have peace. When Mass ended, most people began to leave. Sarah stayed seated. She wasn't in a hurry to go home to the small, hot apartment where she'd spend the rest of Sunday washing clothes and cleaning, because Monday everything would start all over again. Hannah tugged at her sleeve. "Can I walk around a little?" "Yes, you can, but slowly." Hannah stood and began to walk down the aisle, one hand extended, feeling the air. Sarah kept her eyes on her. Hannah moved with that natural caution of someone who had learned early that the world isn't a safe place when you can't see. Then Hannah stopped in front of the altar. Sarah stood up quickly, thinking her daughter had lost her way. But Hannah wasn't lost. She stood there still, head tilted, as if listening to something. "Hannah!" The girl didn't answer. Sarah approached. "What is it, sweetheart?" Hannah pointed ahead. "There's someone here." Sarah looked. There was no one but them and two elderly women at the back of the church. "There's no one, Hannah." "Yes, there is. I feel it." Hannah took a step forward. Then another. Her hands were outstretched, searching. Sarah followed, curious. Hannah stopped in front of the statue of the Virgin Mary. "Is it her?" Sarah looked at the statue, then at her daughter. "It's a statue, Hannah. The Virgin Mary." "Can I touch it?" Sarah hesitated. She looked around. The church was almost empty. The priest had left. There was no one there to be bothered. "You can." Sarah picked Hannah up and lifted her to the height of the statue. Hannah reached out her little hands, slowly, carefully. She touched the cold plaster, ran her fingers over the blue mantle, over the face, over the outstretched hands, and she stayed there. She kept touching that statue of the Virgin Mary for too long. Sarah was about to say something, but something stopped her. There was something in the way Hannah touched it. It wasn't curiosity, it was something else, something deeper. Finally, Hannah took her hands away and wrapped her arms around her mother's neck. "She's beautiful." Sarah looked at the statue, that serene face painted on faded plaster. "Yes, my daughter, very beautiful." Sarah set Hannah back on the ground. They stood in silence for a few more seconds. Then Sarah took her daughter's hand. "Shall we go home?" "Yes." On the way back, Hannah was quieter than usual. She didn't talk, didn't ask questions. She just held her mother's hand and walked. Sarah thought it was strange but didn't comment. Sometimes Hannah got like that, lost in her own thoughts Sarah would never know. The first few weeks after that Sunday passed normally. Hannah returned to her routine with her nanny Linda during the day. She played, ate, slept. Sarah went back to the suffocating routine of her two jobs. But Sarah started to notice strange things, small things, things that maybe meant nothing. It was on a Tuesday night. Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner. She turned on the light. From the other room, Hannah turned her head toward the kitchen. Sarah didn't think much of it. It could be coincidence. Must be coincidence. Maybe Hannah heard the click of the switch. But the next week, something else happened. Sarah was folding clothes in the living room. Hannah was playing on the floor. Sarah got up to go to the bedroom for more clothes. She made no noise. She was barefoot, walking softly. But when she came back, Hannah stretched out her arms toward her before Sarah said a word. "How did you know I was coming back?" "I knew. But I didn't make a sound, Hannah." Hannah shrugged and went back to playing. Sarah began paying more attention, watching Hannah all the time now, looking for signs. And the signs were there. Hannah started avoiding things she shouldn't have known were there. Sarah would leave a toy in the middle of the hallway on purpose, waiting for Hannah to pass. Hannah would step aside. "How did you know something was on the floor?" "I felt it." "Felt it how?" "I just felt it." Sarah didn't know what to think. She knew that blind children developed sharper senses. The doctors had explained that. But this seemed beyond that. It seemed impossible. It was Linda who noticed the change, too. "Sarah, there's something different about Hannah," Linda said one Saturday when she came to drop Hannah off. "Different how?" "I don't know. She seems to know where things are before she touches them. This morning she grabbed her cup of juice without feeling around the table for it. She went straight for it." Sarah felt her heart race. "You think that—" "I don't know what to think, but something's different." That night Sarah lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, thinking. It couldn't be. Hannah was blind. The doctors had been clear. No cure, no treatment. Impossible. But what if? Sarah pushed the thought away. She couldn't allow herself hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope hurt when it was torn away. 2 more weeks passed. The signs continued. Hannah reacting to light. Hannah avoiding obstacles. Hannah knowing when someone entered the room before making a sound. Sarah scheduled an appointment with Dr. Hansen, the ophthalmologist who had treated Hannah since she was a baby. The appointment was on a Thursday afternoon. Sarah missed work. She took Hannah to Dr. Hansen's office. He was a kind man with graying hair. He'd known Hannah for 3 years, always honest with Sarah, maybe too honest. "Sarah, it's so good to see you," he said with a smile. "How's our little girl doing?" "Doctor, I need to tell you something," Sarah said before he could even start the exam. He looked at her, catching the urgency in her tone. "I think Hannah is reacting to light." Dr. Hansen frowned. "Reacting how?" Sarah explained everything, the lights, the objects, the signs. She spoke quickly, tripping over her words, trying not to sound insane. Dr. Hansen said nothing. Then he picked up his small flashlight and performed the basic test. He shone the light into Hannah's eyes. Hannah blinked. Dr. Hansen froze. Did it again. Hannah blinked again. He set the flashlight down. Removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes. "Sarah, this isn't possible." "But it's happening." "I'll order more detailed tests." "But, Sarah—" He looked at her with that heavy seriousness doctors have when they've seen too much. "Don't get your hopes up. It could just be a reflex. It doesn't mean vision." The tests were scheduled for the following week. They were long, exhausting. Hannah had to sit inside loud machines. Sarah waited outside, biting her nails until they bled. When the results were ready, Dr. Hansen called Sarah in, without Hannah. He wore an expression Sarah had never seen on him before. Confusion, shock. "Sarah, I don't know how to explain this. The tests show activity in Hannah's optic nerves." Sarah felt her knees weaken. "Activity? It's faint, inconsistent, but it's there." "But you said it was impossible, and I still think it is. Sarah, I've been following Hannah since she was a baby. In all the previous exams, there was nothing. Zero activity. And now, there is." Sarah couldn't speak. She just stood there, frozen, processing. "What does that mean?" "It means something has changed. Something I've never seen in 30 years of medicine. I'll refer Hannah to specialists. But Sarah, even with activity, it doesn't mean she will see." Sarah left that office floating. It wasn't joy. It was fear. Fear of believing. Fear that it was a mistake. The 4th month after the visit to the church was when denial became impossible. One afternoon they were in the backyard. Hannah suddenly stopped and pointed upward. "Mom, what's that?" Sarah looked where Hannah was pointing. "What do you mean, honey?" "That big thing, the one that's above everything." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "That's the sky, Hannah." "Sky," Hannah repeated the word. "Has it always been there? Always? Why didn't I know?" Sarah didn't know what to say. "I tried to explain it to you before, honey, but you couldn't understand." "Now I feel like there's something there. I can't explain it well. Linda called Sarah's work a week later, her voice tense. Sarah, you need to come home right now. What happened? Hannah is... She's acting strange. Sarah dropped everything and ran. When she arrived, Linda was in the living room with Hannah. The girl was sitting on the couch completely still, her hands covering her face. Hannah, what's wrong? Hannah lowered her hands. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. Mom, something's happening. Everything is different. Different how? I don't know how to explain. Before, everything was one way. Now it's another. There are things. Things I don't know what they are. Sarah knelt in front of her. Are you scared? I am. I don't know what this is. Sarah hugged her daughter. She felt her heart break. We'll go to the doctor, okay? We'll find out what's happening. The appointment with Dr. Hansen was 3 days later. He examined Hannah carefully, performing tests that lasted almost 2 hours. When he finished, he called Sarah into the other room to talk privately. Sarah, Hannah's optic nerves are active. She's processing visual information, but she doesn't understand what she's seeing. Exactly. Hannah has never seen before. It's like learning a new language without a teacher. She's confused, frightened. What do I do? You need to help her understand. Teach her what the things she's perceiving are. But Sarah, it's going to be hard, very hard, and her vision won't be perfect. It will probably be blurry, incomplete. I'll prescribe glasses when she's ready, but for now, just stay with her. Help her process what's happening. On the way home, Hannah said nothing. She only held her mother's hand tightly. The following weeks were the hardest of Sarah's life. Hannah was constantly overwhelmed. She saw blurs, stains, shapes she couldn't understand. She cried, saying there was too much, that she couldn't make sense of it, that she wanted it to stop. Sarah spent hours with Hannah, pointing at things, letting Hannah touch and look at the same time. This here, Hannah, is a chair. Do you see it? Hannah touched, looked, tried to connect. It's dark. That's right, it's brown. Brown is dark. Hannah learned slowly, very slowly, but she learned. Linda helped however she could. She stayed with Hannah on the days Sarah had to work, continuing the lessons, continuing the process. One day Hannah pointed at Linda. You're different from my mom. Yes, I am. I'm older. Older is that? Yes, sweetheart. That's what older means. By the 5th month, Hannah began identifying basic shapes. Big, small, far, near, but everything was still blurry. Everything was still confusing. Dr. Hansen scheduled another appointment. It's time for glasses, Sarah. Hannah needs correction. Her vision has many problems, but the glasses will help. They'll make things more defined. The glasses took a week to be ready. Sarah picked them up alone and kept them in her bag. That night after dinner, Sarah sat with Hannah in the living room. Hannah, I have something for you. What is it? Sarah took the glasses from the box. They're glasses. They'll help you see better. Sarah carefully placed the glasses on Hannah, adjusted them behind her ears. Now, open your eyes slowly. Hannah opened her eyes. She became completely still. She looked around the room, at the furniture, the walls, her own hands. Then she looked at Sarah, and for the first time she truly saw her mother, not perfectly. There was still blur around the edges, still parts that weren't clear, but she could see. She could see the face, the eyes, the hair. Hannah began to cry. Mom, Sarah was crying too. You can see me? Hannah nodded, tears running down behind the glasses. You look like this. Yes, my beautiful one. Hannah lifted her hand and touched Sarah's face, looking and touching at the same time. You're beautiful, Mom. Sarah took Hannah into her arms and held her. They cried together. Hannah spent the rest of the night exploring, looking at everything through the glasses, at the house she had known by touch, now taking visual form, at the toys she recognized by hand, now having appearance. Mom, the world is so different from what I imagined. Or how is it different? It's bigger. It has more things. It has colors I didn't know existed. You can see colors? I can see that they're different. Sarah spent the next weeks teaching Hannah. This is red, this is blue, this is yellow. Hannah learned, connecting what she saw with the names. Weeks turned into months. Hannah completely adapted to the glasses. Her vision improved. It never became perfect, but she could see. She saw enough. She saw what mattered. Hannah started school. She made friends quickly. The other children were fascinated by the story of the miracle, the girl who had been blind and now could see. Sarah began going back to church regularly, always with Hannah. They always stopped in front of the statue of the Virgin Mary. Hannah looked at the blue mantle, the outstretched hands, the serene face. "Thank you," she whispered every time. Years later, when Hannah was 10, Sarah took her back to that same church on a Sunday morning. They sat on the same pew where they had sat that day. "Do you remember, Hannah?" "I remember everything, Mom. I remember knowing something was going to change." And it did. It changed everything. I can see you now. I can see the world. I'll never forget what she did for me. Sarah took her daughter's hand. I won't forget either. Never. They sat there for a few more minutes, looking at the statue of the Virgin Mary. And when they left the church, hand in hand, the sun was shining brightly. Hannah looked up at the blue sky and smiled. "Mom, I love you. I love you too, my beautiful girl, more than anything in this world." They walked together down the street, mother and daughter, a journey that began in darkness and ended in light, a miracle of the Virgin Mary that no one could explain, but everyone had witnessed. And Hannah knew, deep in her heart, that the lady in blue had never abandoned her. That touch in the church had changed everything. That some miracles happen when you least expect them, and that faith doesn't need an explanation. It only needs a heart that believes. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell to receive more stories of miracles of the Virgin Mary, and share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue to bless and protect you and your family. Amen.